Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. Coming out of Infocom, really one of the things that stood out more than anything for me was the groundswell of support for the command and control community. I had an opportunity to attend one of their events and meetings, and it was incredible to see the knowledge that was shared and the amount of information that these folks had. And in my personal opinion, the command and control world is one of the more underserved enterprise communities in our Pro AV world. So wanted to use today's episode to kind of help elevate and chat with some of the voices in that community. And those two voices that I have on today are Dan Gundry over from Barco and John Litt over from G&D North America. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you as well, Ben.
Well, Dan, I'll have you kick us off here, right? I gave the Infocom tease kind of up front, but it was really the first official meetup for a lot of folks in the command and control world. Obviously, that is not the only one. We're talking about shows like GSX and ISC West that happen as part of that community as well. But if you would just give us a quick recap of how the meetup went at the show and some of the things kind of coming out of that we pulled away.
Well, real quick background on this. This initiative started about 5 or 6 years ago. Steve Emspec, Randy Pagnon, Randy Smith really started this off. Labor of love, trying to get command and control more prominent within Avixa. Timing wasn't right. I picked up the ball maybe a year or so ago, thought this was a really good idea. Starting to get a little older in age. The hairline is receding. I beat you to it, Ben. So I'm starting to think about leaving the industry in a better place than I found it. So along with a host of different people, we came together and said, let's start to do this. To your point from off camera, Avixa, who polls their integrator community on an annual basis, and then Mr. Labuscas goes around and gives his state of the industry tour, did that last fall. And in there is a slide that's very telling about command and controls, which is when they poll the integrator community and they say, where do you see growth in your business over the next 3 years by vertical? You've got digital signage, you've got workplace, UCC, esports, and command and control, and there's a couple of other ones on there. Command and control, surprisingly to some, not to John and myself, hopefully, was ranking as the #1 leading opportunity for resellers, by the integration community. So that all kind of manifested itself in the command and control meetup that we had on Thursday. Avixa was kind enough to host that for us, and they gave us a forum and a location for us to come together and say, what do we want to do to make our voice heard as an industry, not as individual companies, not as individual people, but as an industry. And I was overwhelmed by the attendance. John was there. Hopefully he can speak more to the event itself.
Yeah, it was fantastic to be in a room of like-minded individuals that are all equally committed to be able to drive our part of the industry. True control room experts are very passionate about it, not just because of the environment in which we work in, which is quite exciting, but because of the mission that we have. We feel like we're seriously making a difference, and we can have a tremendous impact upon what I like to describe potentially as the worst day of the operator's life that are using those control rooms. So it was so refreshing to be in the same room with folks that all have that equal mindset. And I'm hoping that we can capitalize on that energy and momentum and continue to propel it forward.
Well, and John, one of the things too that really stood out to me is that it was, you saw integrators, you saw manufacturers, you saw industry thought leaders, experts, even a couple of end users, if I'm not mistaken, I saw there. From a manufacturer like yourselves perspective, what are some of the conversations that you're pulling away from it? And even on a high level, what are some of the things you're hoping to gain?
Well, what am I hoping to gain is basically more quality assurance, more quality control, and our ability to be able to deliver our products and services to the end users. And what do I mean by that? Many of the control rooms that we work in are in bid situations. So as a result of it, we as the manufacturers could be working directly with the end users and or consultants, and we're able to identify exactly what we need to do for that application. But of course, there's that between that conversation and the implementation, many times there's going to be a bid process. And in that bid process, different companies, different organizations, government versus non-government, they all kind of manage it a very different way under their current regulations and how they see the world. And as a result of it, that's where a weak point could potentially be, to where, if lowest price is going to win on an opportunity, you may potentially be getting someone that's qualified to be able to actually fulfill that mission. So as a result of it, when it actually comes to be, when you're actually needing to use an environment, the tools that are being put into place may not necessarily be implemented as well as they possibly could be. So what am I hoping to gain from it? I'm hoping to be able to gain a recognition of the skill set, which is rather unique, of what it takes to be a quality control room integrator, what it actually involves, not just during the bidding process and the installation, but also what does it take after the sale, after the installation, and what is needed to take to support as well. So I'm hoping to raise the bar. We're hoping to be able to raise all ships, if you would, of being able to establish a criteria or a baseline of what's involved in this, be able to set up a baseline of an educational track, and then a recognition of a certification. So when a consultant or an end user is putting out their bid spec, they can say this type of specification is required. I mean, something we threw around at the event with CTS-CR, for example. That's nothing official. That's just conversation. But, a certified technical specialist within the AVIXA program, CR being for control room, these individuals have a certain level of education that they have gone through and they have tested out and they're proven to be professionals in that industry. If we can get that type of criteria built into some of these bid specifications, I think the through product at the end is going to be much higher for many of the end users that are actually procuring these products and services. And that not just helps G&D North America, that helps Barco, and it helps everybody else involved in the industry. And most importantly, it helps the person that's actually, or the organizations that are actually purchasing the control room products and services that we're providing.
Well, John, you bring up a really interesting and impactful point, right? You talk about the certification side, and I love how you phrased it, preventing the worst day of an operator's life, right? There is so much impact. There's so much importance that the control room community provides, right? And that's not just in your AV KVMs, your LED walls, right? From a larger security perspective, there's a lot of requirements that have to go into these from, whether it's access control, whether it's making sure that you have proper IP security, making sure that you have these rooms set up for success. And Dan, I want to talk to you from somebody who's had experience in the integrator world as well. It's great to hear this from manufacturers and being able to build certification standards and best practices and things like that. But how does that trickle down to the integrator, especially when you start talking about having to ensure things like security and long-term value?
So first of all, John also has been on the integration side as well. So you're dealing with people who have very similar career tracks. He made the jump over to manufacture slightly before I did, but his perspective also, for sure. Yeah, for sure as well. You have me beat on that one, John. I think the integration community is kind of hungry to expand out. There's probably, arguably today, 10 to 15 what I would call control room minded integrators out there that live and breathe in this space every day. That might be a conservative number, actually. It really probably is a lot less than that. I'm probably giving credit where credit's not necessarily due. But let's call it 10 to 15 to service the entire North American or America's command and control environments, whether that be in the federal government side, military side, air traffic control, which is really big for G&D North America and others, into the security, the SOCs and the NOCs and all those other mid-market type opportunities. So first of all, it's education. John touched on it, right? We need to get people that know what they're talking about when they go in these spaces to deploy systems, to engineer solutions. But it also starts at a higher level, which is getting more integrators understood and coached up and trained and aware of these spaces. John alluded to a bid process, but I would actually argue outside of the federal government world, the municipal government world, it's a lot of design, build, sole source, negotiated work. So you as an integrator have the ability to not just build margin and profitability, but it allows you then, because you have margin and profitability, to deliver real high quality, right? You're not skimping on things because you went after it at these super low, no margin, low margin type of opportunities. So one, it's awareness of the market, and then two, it's the training. Here's the quote that I tell very often when I'm out there talking about it. Your normal AV sales representative, and even I'll argue your normal AV sales engineer, is walking by the $1 million control room to sell the $10,000 huddle room space. And I believe they do it because they're either ignorant of the space and or they're fearful of the conversation in the space. So I think it starts with education and awareness and builds out from there.
Well, John, I've got to give you a chance to respond to that, right? We talked a little bit before the show, kind of like to Dan's point where he mentioned, people are skipping these opportunities. A lot of people are trying to make the shift to AV as a service, which is great, and there's a place for that. But there's so much need for existing infrastructure and existing installations that are happening in the industry. What are some of the ways that integrators can help make that jump into the command and control space?
Recognizing what the true problems are and what the needs of the customers are is where it starts. And through an education track, I think we can possibly get there. When you look at the outside, and I don't want it to sound bad, but when you're talking about the type of projects we're talking about, and what Dan's just referenced as well, is an integrator from the outside that has no familiarity in control room is going to look at that opportunity and it's like, yeah, it's a display, it's microphones, it's speaker. I can do that. But what they're not understanding is what everything else is involved that you can't necessarily put together in a technical specification. You just mentioned, of course, infrastructure. That's going to be a big part of that. There's the redundancy of that. There's power redundancy you need to plan for. There's cybersecurity issues that you need to have to plan for. There's access to the space. There's how you handle the debris. There's so many different things that are involved in doing a control room properly. Now, of course, if I'm doing a control room for an entity within the Department of Defense, it's handled at one level. If I'm doing something for, XYZ manufacturing and it's a control room for running a production plant, it's going to be completely different. But nonetheless, having a understanding of what those true challenges are and then be able to go through a curriculum of where you can get proper education on that, it's just much more than just installing the product. It's everything else that goes around that. It's the documentation. It's the type of individuals that I'm going to have on that job site. It's what do you have to do to properly prepare for that job site? It's certifications. There's so much that goes along with it, but it's simply a lack of familiarity or understanding of what's truly involved. So back to unfortunately, the bidding process, but I do totally agree with Dan. And some of your state and local, it may be more of a design build. But, from an outside in, if a qualified integrator is bidding that project properly, they're going to be at one particular price point. Someone else that's not necessarily understanding all the other items that are involved in that is going to be bidding it at a lower price because they're not pricing that. When they actually get they get the award because they're the lowest price. And when they get to the job site, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that. I didn't know I need to do this. I didn't know I need to do that. And then most importantly, when it's actually turned over to the customer, are all the proper precautions put into place. So therefore that end user is properly protected. Now, for Dan and I, yes, we've been integrators, but we're manufacturers now, and our brand and our solution is being supported and represented by this integrator. So it's in our best interest because we want our brand and our products to be recognized as being actually helpful to those worst days of their lives.
Well, and Dan, I want to follow up there too, especially from the manufacturer side, right? One of the things that I really pulled out of the conversation at Infocom was transparently and openness and collaboration that I have not ever seen at that scale in the CNC community. And some of that is we're willing to give up some of that tribal knowledge that maybe we held on to in the past. But from a manufacturing standpoint, how can you collaborate as manufacturers to help serve not only the end users, but the integrators, installers, and even some of those CTO folks?
Well, let's try to unpack a little bit of it. So from the integrator perspective, there was the balance of people that were in that room was about 40% manufacturers and about 35% integrators and about 15% consultants and some other types of individuals. So it wasn't a manufacturer heavy event by any stretch. So the integrators that all came who have either a focus and or an interest in this market understand what it takes to actually do these projects. All right, the knowledge base that you need to have to go in and do proper discovery, proper engineering, using the right products, designing around and be able to answer the things like the cybersecurity conversations, the redundancy and auto failover type conversations. So all of those little feature sets, these companies understand how to do that. They're not going to give away secret sauce, right? But they also understand they're in a room with like-minded people that generally get it. On the manufacturer side, again, I think the biggest threat that we have as manufacturers of command and control hardened equipment is the rest of Infocom, right? The rest of those people that are out there doing commercial AV and or residential level AV, integrators and or manufacturers boasting a 24/7 rated display, for instance, that may work in a digital signage application is not necessarily the right type of display and or video wall product for a mission critical command and control environment. right? And then you can go into, processing solutions for a video wall might be different, or KVM solutions that you'd use for convenience level KVM for stuff that might be remote. It is very different than what John, sells as well in terms of zero latency type of hardened KVM type equipment. So, again, I think our competitors as manufacturers is mostly the rest of the commercial world. I don't think, again, this is an area for secret sauce. It's not going to be, you're not going to have secrets being shared and that kind of stuff. It's really like-minded people and organizations trying to advance the industry.
Well, and to Dan's point, John, one of the things that our industry at large, I don't want to say has been bad about, but one of the things that I've kind of picked up on in the last handful of years is that we like to shoehorn technology in places that it might not have been before, right? And if that's digital signage, if that's CMS control systems, if that's automation, there's a lot of application, right? Especially as you look in verticals like hospitality, healthcare. There's a lot of great applications that our community can help support and execute on. But when you talk about command and control, there's a difference, right? You can't shoehorn technology because, as Dan mentioned, it's mission critical. It's 24/7, always functioning. What are some of the things from a manufacturer's standpoint? And I know obviously you guys do a great job of this at G&D, the North American side of G&D as well. What are some of the things as a manufacturer you have to kind of always consider when you develop these projects or develop these products versus maybe a traditional AV manufacturer?
Traditional AV manufacturer, if it fails, it's okay. In our world, that's not okay. So everything you design in that product has to be absolutely work. It's not an option. You have to work. If I just lost my power source, I need a backup power source. If I've just lost that signal, I need a backup signal. If I've just lost that network, I still need the ability to be able to get that network someplace else. Less things to make it very, very intuitive, make it very easy to be able to operate. Not because it's simple, it's complex, but we design it to be simple for that operator. I always use, Dan mentioned the municipal EOC environment, for example. I look at that as being one of the most challenging and demanding type of controller environments. And the reason why I say that is because you don't have the same people in those environments every event. The people that were in training went through that particular exercise and learned how to use the system. That's great. But when the event actually happens, which you have no control over, then when that happens, who's available then? And so you have to make sure that these systems are operational for everybody. So what do we have to take in consideration as mission critical manufacturers? Failure is not an option, and it has to be exceptionally easy to use, not made dumbed down. It's still got to function at the level that we need it to work, and it still has to have all the protections, but it has to be transparent to the user. So it's a very different process in how you do the research and development, how you do the engineering, how do you do the production, and then also how do you support it. If someone's calling you and saying, hey, my widget is down, okay, fine. We'll send you another one. It'll be out there in 2 weeks. No, you don't understand. My widget is down. My operations are down. I need this fixed now. So therefore, the integrator and the manufacturers need to be used to working in that type of environment. We have to know these things are going to happen, and we have to be able to plan for them up front, not only in our products, but also how we do our business.
Well, it's helpful for folks like me, right? I've been in the industry for a while and typically live a little bit less on the mission critical side, but as we continue to evolve as an industry, these are conversations we have to have more and more, right? So, when you think about whether it's trade shows, maybe events, places people can go learn and train, things like that. Dan, what comes to mind? And John, I'll ask you the same question when Dan finishes as well. But what are some of the ways that folks that are in kind of that core commercial pro AV world learn a little bit more? Where are some of the places that they can go to learn more about mission critical in the command and control side?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben, because I think it's the biggest problem, and I don't have an easy answer for you. We've been really light on education as a marketplace. That's one of the things we're trying to change. We had I think, first ever command and control educational session at InfoComm. We'll have another one at CI Expo in Denver. Talking specifically around control room design, integration, and support best practices. So we're starting to see that. Your different manufacturers do run webinars on a pretty regular basis. So that's an area, a lot of those are educational based, not necessarily product focused. So you can glean information from there. It's going to get part of your peer groups. Reach out to those people that are in this space. Follow the appropriate people and or companies on LinkedIn, and it's just going to be osmosis for a while until we start to get to these things like John talked about in terms of real training tracks and real educational based opportunities.
Yeah, and that's it. Where do we go? That's exactly what the question is we don't really have a place to go. So they can come to G&D North America, they can get some training, but it's going to be a product training. They can go to Barco, get some training, but it's going to be a product training. It's everything else that goes along with it. So when I look at it, when I came out of the military and I did my college, how did I learn audiovisual? I learned it first and foremost through CEDIA, believe it or not. And I thought they had a fantastic education. They gave me the baseline for what I needed to be an audiovisual professional. They showed me how to do audio, they showed me how to do video, and they also then showed me how to run my business, how to do sales, and how to do marketing on it. I got some great information there at a very young age. I then, of course, progressed into doing manufacturer training, which built on the foundation that I had developed within the association. And then from there, of course, I continued to mature in your industry, and you find your tracks that you really need to be able to fall into and specialize on. What I'm recommending, and I believe others are as well, including Dan, is that there is that type of educational path for the control room. Avixa does also a very fine job of education. They have an audio track, they have a video track, they can have an IT track. And what I'm suggesting is those are all baseline building blocks for what we're trying to do. We also need to be able to develop that curriculum to be able to do control room so we can make sure that we're hitting those particular points. What I'd also like to add to that is we need to be able to continue to develop our workforce. Dan mentioned, there's 12 or 15 companies that are out there, and let's say that there's X number of people and there's a finite number of resources out there. To be real, truly honest, and not necessarily trying to be disrespectful of it, but if an individual who could be exceptionally well talented ends up in an organization that may not necessarily have the best skill sets, but they've been doing it this way, well, that individual is simply learning bad habits. And so by doing it through something outside the organization, such as through Avixa, we have the ability to be able to really grow our workforce. So we are able to take those individuals that are coming into this workforce and they're able to get the right foundation, and we can make everything better. We can make ourselves better, but also we have longevity. Dan and I are basically in the middle part of our career. We still have many, many years ahead of us, but at the same time, we need to develop those that are coming in behind us to be able to replace us, but also to be able to deliver better products and services to our customers. And as Dan also said, the market's expanding. So as a result of it, we need the ability to be able to serve that. So we have to create this educational, we have to create that answer to education. Avixa, whether you do it through community college and through vocational programs, there's answers out there. We just need to be able to come together, determine how we want to see that structured, be able to actually get some volunteers to be able to do it, to do the work, which is hard work, and then be able to then launch it and continue to grow it. I'm firmly believe in this.
Well, I'll also plug shows like GSX, ISC West. Shows like that are great places to go learn and observe. Those skew a little bit more towards the security side of the house, but great place to meet manufacturers, learn, ask questions, attend some of these sessions. Obviously, making strides in the normal shows, the Infocoms of the world, the CDs of the world. Great opportunities moving forward as well. But look, gentlemen, I appreciate you both coming on. This is a conversation that is probably one of many that we'll continue to have, because as the industry expands, the need for education and training and growth will continue to expand. So I appreciate you both coming on and having this conversation with us.
Thank you so much, Travis.
Thanks, Ben.
And thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe this episode. Tune in next time for Pro AV Today.